This is Decoding Learning Differences with Kimberlyn Lavelle, and this episode is Relational Education with Dr. Norrine Russell. Today I am talking with Dr. Norrine Russell, and she's got some great wisdom, some great insight, especially into autism, ADHD, executive functioning, helping kids focus, all of that. So we talked about a bunch of different stuff, and make sure you are listening at the end because she does have a special offer for the listeners. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Russell. Can you please introduce yourself a little bit, tell everybody about yourself and what all you're doing and offering?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. Looking forward to having a great conversation with you about our mutual interests. So thank you for having me. I am, and have been for the last 17 years, the founder and director of Russell Coaching for Students. And what we do at Russell Coaching for Students is we help complex kids who need help in executive functioning, learning and study skills, and social and emotional skills. So our niche really is that kid who doesn't just have some simple ADHD, but has maybe ADHD and dyslexia, or has autism and ADHD. So the word we use for that is complex. So most of the students at our practice have two or more diagnoses, and those could be learning differences, it could be psychiatric diagnoses, but they're really struggling with their executive functioning skills, their learning and study skills, and the social and emotional stuff goes along with that. So that's what I do. We see about 150 students a week, and we are the largest student coaching practice in the country.
Do you see them in person or online or both?
We see them online, and actually, that's something I'm really proud of. So we started building our online methods about 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, and just collected data this spring on how do the students feel about it. Is being online a detriment to them? And 90% of students say they have no concerns about meeting online, that it works for them. And I think part of that is, we know, right? We know that not everything is meant to be delivered online, but the way that we've built our coaching method is it's very much like a meeting with a mentor. And so there's structure there, and it's one-on-one, and it's not overly personal. I mean, it's personal, it's about school, but it's not like doing therapy online. And
Right.
so we really feel good about the fact that we are offering these services online, and that kids are comfortable with it, and it is not a deterrent. So, we obviously, technology and education is a big hot topic these days, but for us, we are online and have really built our method to be successful online.
Yes, we could talk about technology again later. What ages are the kids that you're serving?
Yep. So we start at upper elementary, like fourth and fifth grade, and we work with students all the way through high school and college and through young adulthood. So up to, let's say, 25, 30, but we don't do ADHD coaching for adults.
Okay. All right. Sounds awesome.
It's really fun and very rewarding. And, the students we work with are neurodiverse in a few different ways, and that's complicated. And so, yeah, I feel really fortunate to have ended up here and doing this work, because it's just really rewarding for myself and the coaches.
Yeah, I bet. I think I guess that's why we all do things along these lines is working with the kids directly is so rewarding.
Right.
Um, what is your biggest passion within education? I'm hearing executive functioning a lot, so I'm wondering, is that the thing that like you get most excited about or passionate about, or is there something?
Honestly, I think that my biggest driving passion is independence and competency and accomplishment. You know, I love seeing a kid go from being, kind of checked out or feeling like their teachers don't like them or they don't know what to do or they don't know how to do it to being in charge of their education. I am so old school. I think education is really important. It's a value I was raised with. It's a value I'm raising my own kids with. And I think for a lot of kids who are neurodiverse, they feel like they don't really fit into the box at school and they don't know how to navigate the systems. And so I love that question. I've never been asked it, but I think really what drives me, the passion is helping students become independent and competent and passionate about their own education.
I love that. Yes. Yes. Okay. Um, One term that is showing up more and more lately is I don't know if I've ever even seen heard someone say it versus I always see it written is what I call AuDHD, like
Yeah.
AuDHD.
I don't know how we're pronouncing it, right?
Okay.
AU. Yeah, I don't know how we're pronouncing that, but I'm
Okay.
seeing it all over,
Yes, I
all
always
over.
see it written, but like
Yep.
the U is small and everything else is capital. So I'm like, okay, I feel like the AU is like the aw sound for
Yeah,
autism, right?
right. Yeah. I'm really glad that people are starting to pay attention to this. This has kind of an interesting history because it used to be in the previous psychiatric manual that a person could not have a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. It was assumed that ADHD or attention issues in general were part of autism. Then now in the manual that's used currently by those who diagnose, you can now diagnose a person with both. But I think that we still, for the last 10 years or so, have always separated it. Kids with ADHD, kids with autism. And we don't look at what's the real profile. And the fact that 50 to 70% of people with autism also meet the criteria for ADHD means we really need to be looking at what is this person's individual profile, whether that's in individual clinical work, whether it's the type of work I do, coaching, whether it's in the school system. It is a different profile to have ADHD without autism, to have autism without ADHD, which is not very common, and then to have both conditions. And I think the most helpful thing that I've read lately is when a person has both, it's sort of like having their foot on the gas pedal all the way, at the same time they have their foot on the brake all the way. The ADHD is the go, go, go. Let's get it done. I need stimulation. I need, excitement. I need my brain to be going, going, going. And the autism part is like, but wait, be careful. I'm not sure about this. I like things to stay the same. And you put those two things together. And I know for us, what we see is kids who are struggling even more with executive functioning.
Yeah. And I agree. When I first started seeing the autism plus ADHD, I was confused because I was like, I was taught you can't have both. It's one or the other. You're either have attention problems because you're autistic or you have social problems because you have ADHD. You don't have both.
Right. Right.
It's just like which one is it more like this or is it more like that? And then it's also like a funny thing, like why are we trying to separate
Yeah.
what feels like it does make sense? Like you said, like most kids with autism, most people with autism will have attention difficulties
Mhm.
and
And the latest figure I've read on the ADHD side is maybe somewhere around 20% of people with ADHD also have autism characteristics or diagnosis. So it's going to be an exciting decade coming up to figure out what do these, you know, what do these kind of gradations and, more sophisticated thinking about this, how does this help us understand kids and people?
Yeah. Okay. When parents get a diagnosis for their child, an ADHD diagnosis or an autism diagnosis, they often kind of panic and worry a lot, a lot, a lot. What do you want them to know? What message would you give to these parents?
You know, I just want to say that that is normal. It is to be expected. Do not rush yourself through the process of learning about the diagnosis, of learning about how to read the reports that you get. You know, this is a significant piece of news about your child, and it can really impact how you feel about how you're doing as a parent. It can impact your concerns about your child. I'll tell you personally, my son had an early diagnosis of ADHD at 3 and did not have his autism diagnosis until he was 8. And for 9 months, 9 months after the autism diagnosis, I would write the psychologist and I would say, are you sure it's not just anxiety? Are you sure he has autism? It took me a long time to come to terms with that. And my son is a typical complex kid. He has ADHD, severe ADHD. He has some learning differences. He's gifted. He definitely has the mood piece. And I don't know what it was about that diagnosis that just hit me a little bit harder. I think too, because he didn't seem like what I thought of as a typical kid with autism. Now, this was 10 years ago. But what I would say to parents is your child is still the same child they were the day before you took them for the evaluation, the day before you got the diagnosis. And the things that your child loves and the things that are important to your child, those aren't going to change. Fundamentally, who your kid is, that loving, kind person who loves animals or loves to draw or is an athlete, like all of that is just the same. And what I think is helpful, speaking purely as a parent, is it gave me another lens through which I could view my child and understand my child, which is what I wanted as a parent, right? A lot of things about my son were a mystery to me. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to help him manage it. And so I think, to use an expression that's overused, but people relate to it, knowledge is power. Knowledge is empowering. And so having that diagnosis is something that will guide you and lead you to tools and resources that you can choose how you want to apply. So I would say take your time as you need to make peace with the diagnosis, and then, think of it as just being another piece of your child's makeup and something that you can learn tools to help them with.
Yes. Well said. Perfect. So tools to help our kids. What do parents need to do differently for ADHD kids, or kids that have attention difficulties that maybe don't have a diagnosis, but what do they need to do differently?
I think one of the things that right now we're struggling with in parenting and education is the balance of support and expectations, right? And what specific supports are helpful, and how do we keep our expectations high for kids while not being overly demanding in that moment or at that time, right? How do we take the long view? And so, yeah, maybe today was a bad day for that kid, and it was time to let go of that expectation and say, okay, this kid is doing the best they're doing. I'm doing the best I'm doing. We're going to start again tomorrow. But I really see conversations all over the place about, you know, more support, more support, more support, decrease expectations. And I think we've got to revisit that conversation and figure out which supports actually help a child with this particular makeup, and how do we keep in the long run our expectations high in a way that's reasonable. And so that to me is always the balance. Like we can't just, you know, allow ADHD or autism or mood disorders or dyslexia to be the end of having expectations for our child, right? But on any given day, it might be the end of that day.
Right. I think that that is a really good point, and it does become very nuanced and individualized and hard to say one thing for everybody. But it is also very true that we tend to put a kid on an IEP and just give every kid on an IEP the same accommodations that might be taking away actual expectations of what they're required to do. And for some kids, those accommodations can make them feel more empowered and more successful and actually able to accomplish more. But for other kids, it makes them feel like, well, you don't think I can do it like that? Like you don't, they it's almost insulting. Um, and then they wind up actually kind of not having as much confidence in themselves because the adults don't seem to have confidence in them.
Right.
So,
It's a big challenge. I'm not denying that, but I think we have to really go diving into what does this child need? What works for this child? Most schools I think are underfunded, they're under-resourced. There's not enough training in special ed or exceptional ed, and we kind of rely on the standard accommodations. But if we really care about education in this country and we really want to move the needle in terms of, like you and I were just saying, reading and math scores, as well as future outcomes, careers, jobs, financial stability. I think we've just got to figure out more individually how kids need to be helped. And I think that's part of why we're seeing this movement in some states toward vouchers and toward homeschooling. Now, that too is a whole nother show along with technology. But I think that, you know, we're done with the box. We're done with the box. The box doesn't work for everyone. It never really worked for anyone. We kind of made it work through threats and punishments and things like that. But we've got to figure out how to think in a more sophisticated fashion about how do we unlock this particular child's potential.
yeah. Right. We need to, yeah. And yes, there's a lot there. Uh okay. What can we do to help our kids focus?
Okay. Okay. I think one of the things, and I think some states are starting to do this, we need more recess time. We need more outside time. And so whether we're talking about helping our kids focus at school or at home, we need outside time. We need unstructured time, playtime, recess time, green space. And so whether that's putting recess back into schools in a significant way, or whether that's saying, for your child, that you figure out a way for them to be outside more, to have more unstructured playtime. That is important. It is something that research shows very clearly. Exercise and outside time have kind of an immediate impact on focus and attention. So that's something I'll get on my soapbox for, any day of the week. The other thing is, I think we have to talk with kids and acknowledge that sometimes it genuinely is difficult to focus. And we're going to try some different strategies to help you build your focus muscle, right? If you can sit and do 5 minutes of your 20 minutes of reading, let's set the timer for 5 today. Tomorrow, let's set it for 6. Next day, let's set it for 7. Start wherever the child is at in terms of baseline for the amount of time they can focus, and talk to them about building the muscle of this and increase it gradually as they mature and as they master that. So that's the second thing I would say is, collaborate with your child on this. And the last thing I'll say is stay away from saying you have to get focused. Because you hear it, I hear it. You have to focus on this. Telling someone they need to focus does nothing to help them focus. And so, I know we like to have positive strategies and tips, but I will say we've got to stop using that language.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. The telling them to focus is not actually helping anybody focus.
No.
But
And
when we don't know what else to do, we just know what it needs to look like. We're like, do the thing that I need you to do.
right. Oh, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, going back to our conversation about the intersection of autism and ADHD, for parents at home paying attention to what is this environment like, right? Does your child need stimulation or does your child need quiet, restful places? I worked with a school here in Tampa last year, and one of my primary recommendations was take 50% of stuff down in the classroom. We are distracting kids with too many visuals, too many models, too much written information. We have to downsize that. And so for parents at home, pay attention to that too. Are you asking your child to do homework in the kitchen because that's where they can be supervised, but that's also where people are coming in and out and putting their shoes and hanging up things? We have to acknowledge the reality of if it's our kid with ADHD or autism or both, what do they need in their environment? The same way we create what we need as adults, in our own environment. I know I've got my coffee cup, I've got my flowers on my desk, I've got my peaceful music. Our kids are just as deserving of creating the environment that works for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. Really thinking through the environment because it it can make such a huge difference. That can be very overwhelming and distracting to kids. And I've definitely seen a difference in the behavior of kids in different classrooms based on a variety of things. But the amount of stuff on the walls definitely was an impact. And the amount of noise that was happening was
Right.
definitely impacting.
More
Um,
carpet, less posters.
yeah, yeah, yes. Um, So one of the things you talked about was like more recess, more unstructured time, more outside time. Is that so when you're working with students, is that like homework? Like you need to go spend more time outside or anything like that?
The way we would integrate that, the movement piece particularly is if we have a child who's, wiggly and squirmy and needs that kind of transition time, we would actually do some mindfulness activities with them or some jumping jacks or, a little bit of weights or something like that in the first 5 or 10 minutes of session, even though we're online, right? The coach will be right there doing it. Kid will be right there doing it and then settle back down. And then maybe they need another break to do that again after 20 or 25 minutes. And talking with our older students about what do you need in order to focus? If you play a sport, does it help to come directly home from practice and get into your homework while your brain is awake and alive and engaged? Um, you know, would it help to take the dog for a walk? You know, so for the younger ones, we would actually do that during coaching sessions. And for, sort of high school and up, we would make that something that we talk about in terms of their plan for self-regulation.
I love that. Yeah. I think getting them to notice what they need is so important. And when they're younger, it kind of requires, okay, try this and
Mhm.
then see how you feel Notice how well you're able to do the next task. Notice what that your mind is starting to wander or kind of getting pointed out to get, "Oh, it seems like your mind is starting to wander. Maybe we need to do this other activity or take a break or shift in some way."
Right.
Um, I love that. Okay. We've alluded to it a little bit. Technology. What is your view of technology in education?
I'm waiting for the data. I am waiting for the data. I am trained as a scientist. I'm waiting for the data. And I think that right now, the conversation we're having in our country is technology good or bad? That conversation needs to shift to where is technology helpful and where is technology harmful, right? Because we're not going to end up pulling every single laptop or screen or device out of classrooms, right? There's some stuff that does work, but we've got to be looking at this from a more nuanced perspective. Where does it help? Like, I think it helps with some of the rote memorization. Like if you're doing math facts to get that immediate feedback on a math facts program, no, not right. Let's go back and do it. Nope, not right. Let's go back and do it. When you're studying vocabulary words, whether it's in the English language or if you're taking a foreign language, I think there are programs that are really helpful in terms of giving immediate feedback so that there can be mastery of the material. Where I think we've gone wrong is we have put entire courses and all of the course information on platforms like Canvas and expect kids to navigate that in middle school. And it is exhausting, and there's not consistency in how teachers, even at a given school, use it. And so we need to think about that too. You know, and we need to think about how are we how are we creating meaningful mutual relationships using technology, right? Right now, I think we've replaced a lot of things with technology, but we can use technology to create mutual relationships. You know, I think one of the most exciting things is kids being able to collaborate with other students across the world and not waiting to get a letter back in the mail, you know, or doing some of those activities that elementary school kids do where, you know, there's a viral spread of some message through their family and friends, and they can see, oh, my message got to Alabama, my message got to Boston, my message got to California. I think there are things like that that can be fun and worthwhile and help build relationships, but we've got to be thinking about how do we use technology to build connection? Because at the end of the day, everything that's valuable for our mental health and physical health boils down to human connections.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I also, when I'm thinking about it, like you said, harmful versus helpful, when I first started teaching, we would have to pay hundreds of dollars to get the software added to a device that was just one kid's device so that they could use text to speech and hear what was happening, or speech to text and have their words typed for them. And, we might spend $1,000 on one kid just to have this technology that now every kid has.
Mhm.
And the universality of that felt less stigmatizing because a lot of the kids were definitely aware enough to be like, nobody else has this. I don't want to use it. Even though I need it, even though it's going to help my education, I'm not going to use it, except in the privacy of my own home or something like that. But then when all the kids had access, then it was like, okay, well, I like that for my students. I like that everyone has access to speech to text, and it's a normal thing that everyone likes to use because
Mhm.
I know it's helping those students that were struggling with it. Um, but then, yeah, I've also seen where kids are stuck on computers and they're supposed to get so many minutes a day on the computer on this program to learn something, and they're not getting anything out of it.
Mhm.
Especially the ADHD kids, like they're not watching the video to learn the lesson.
No.
I can
No,
say the exact same words to them and they'll listen because I'm a live person. But
right.
the video saying it, they're not listening at all.
No,
So,
no. We cannot replace committed, dedicated, qualified teachers with video programs.
right, right.
That's going the wrong direction. 100% for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to some of us it seems very obvious. So it's concerning when we're not it's continuing down that path or people who I feel like should know better because they're the decision makers in education are making those choices to like keep investing in these things that are not helping our kids to learn better. Like you said, the human relationships is where you get the most growth, the most benefit, the most everything, and those connections are huge.
They are.
Like,
They
and
are.
we were talking about the individualizing. You can't individualize
No,
as much as people want to say that AI will individualize. It's it's not really it's not really meeting any needs in this
no.
world.
And I think our kids are going to be savvy about that,
Yeah.
right? We're going through this sort of honeymoon phase of AI, right? Like, oh, it's so fun to talk to AI. So fun to talk to the bot, some really sad stories that you and I have both heard about, relying on AI for someone to talk to. But I think our kids are going to get savvier and realize there's no one there. There's no one
Right.
home. Like there's no actual there. I think our kids are going to get savvier as they have more exposure to it. It's a innovation, we'll say, that we're going to have to live through, but we're going to figure out what is it good for and what is it not good for.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the people who are saying it's not good for anything are not helping the cause either, right? Like,
Right.
you know, um, embrace what it seems to be good for, where it's not harmful, where it doesn't replace relationship,
Yeah.
and figure out where does it actually really help. One of the areas I think it does not help is reading. I think we need to get back to actual books where you turn the page. I think reading online does not exercise the same brain muscles that reading a book does. And so, um, reading
Yeah.
online, I
Yeah, I know
think,
I've seen that research of they do not score as well in comprehension and all of that.
mm-mm.
Which then actually makes me wonder about I when I first was seeing that, I was like, well, all the state testing is online now. Our
Oh,
score's down because it's online instead of paper that it was a decade ago.
that's a great point. That's a great point. Maybe the actual achievement is similar, but we're not measuring it because it's technology based.
Yeah. And I do think that if they are only learning, if they're all the reading is online, then the comprehension isn't there, and therefore they wouldn't score very well.
Yeah.
But if they're only testing online, and then the scores might be lower than we would expect if they were on paper.
Yeah.
I don't actually know that. It was just a theory because I do know that there is the research that shows when you read things online, you don't have the same level of comprehension as if you are physically turning pages. Um,
That's one thing that we often are working with high school or college students about is reading strategies because
yeah.
they've been given passages, they've been given summaries, and when they get to the point where they're having to read original sources, that is a muscle that hasn't yet been exercised. And so we teach reading methods, not specific to dyslexia, but just general reading methods. And it's much different to teach a child how to read a text online than it was with a book.
Yeah. Yeah. It is it is different. Um, I also feel like it's so much easier to fall in love with reading when you're turning pages. I don't know. Um, oh, you had mentioned it, but we didn't actually share with the listeners the New York Times article that you saw today.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute. So, New York Times today published an article about test scores are in a generation-long decline, and the data compares reading and math scores from 2015 to 2025. So a 10-year period. The pandemic was in there, but this isn't just comparing the pandemic. This is an entire 10-year comparison. And the results from, and this study was done by the Educational Opportunity Project at Stanford, 83% of districts in our country lost ground in reading and 70% lost ground in math.
that is, yeah. So I'm trying to remember when we started doing the online testing, like, because I was just thinking about that connection. Like, I don't think that accounts for 83% decline.
Yeah.
Like, that is huge.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know, right? And
I think that the online testing has been there for more than 10 years, though. So it would
well,
have been testing at the beginning of the online testing versus a decade into it,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
I'm trying to,
It's a data question, right?
yeah,
It's a research study. Want to
yeah.
collaborate?
Yeah. Always. I love to research. Um, yeah. Because I was trying to think about like my students, the first ones that were doing the online testing, and that would have definitely been more than 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and we could
So,
look at, right, districts that implemented online testing versus those that were a little bit later to do that. You
right.
know, we could even look at ACT and SAT administered paper and pencil versus online and see, what differences are there. But it's an empirical question. We have to look at the data.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'd be fun to, I mean, I would love to do this study and actually just give kids the exact test that was given 10 years ago, because we can't go back in time and give them today's test. So
Right,
give them
right.
that exact test and just see, okay, get a really big group of kids
Yeah,
and see what is this test, how are they doing actually compared. Um, but I think no matter what, there's a lot of different data that is all pointing to the same trend that scores are down
yeah,
in reading, in math. Other things I've seen is just in cognition in general, any type of cognition, the scores are down. And it's the first time it's ever happened that one generation is not scoring higher than the previous generation. And it is alarming. And I want everyone to be alarmed and be fighting for things to be better. Um, and I think we both agree that a lot of that comes from being able to individualize the education, which means empowering teachers to be able to make those kinds of decisions, not overloading their classrooms, not giving them a bunch of extra work that takes away from their ability to plan for their individual students,
right.
as
I
well as having different types of schools available.
yeah. I agree with you. I think we need to go back to teachers having a lot more autonomy in their classrooms. I mean, I'm not opposed to standards-based education, but I think that we've made the profession less appealing to people
Yeah,
by not giving them autonomy in their classrooms. And I think we've taken away, this opportunity to really connect with the kids in your classroom, the ones you have that year. And so, yeah, I'm a big proponent of teachers need more autonomy in their classrooms.
yeah, yeah. Instead of the curriculum manufacturers saying, on this day, you will teach this lesson.
Right, right.
That
And
is,
then we will test on this
yeah,
lesson based on our educational materials that we've developed that we will charge your school for.
yeah. And yeah, the test might not actually might cover things that weren't actually in our curriculum, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
that show too. We're like, okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a lot to that, but I think it does all go back to what we've said again and again is just being able to individualize and really meet an individual child's individual needs.
Yeah.
Um,
And that doesn't mean you're going to have 24 or 32 different individual plans, right?
right, right, right.
It doesn't at all. There's a lot that can be done that works for everyone.
Yeah,
But if we really want to make school a place where we develop everyone's potential, then yeah, we've got to look more at individualizing for kids who need it.
yeah. And part of that is also um, that view of if you meet the needs of the struggling learners, you're also meeting the needs of the less struggling students.
Mhm.
It that universal design for learning where you meet the needs of the ones who need it, you're gonna also improve the outcomes of everyone.
Yep.
I remember with the like reading wars that was an argument like, well, 80% of the kids are doing great with this program. Okay, but if you taught to the other 20%, those 80% would do even better. Like it's not a reason to not give the 20% what they need. Um, and
Yeah.
at least that I've seen that shifting and improving, and I'm very happy about that. Um, but I've not seen a whole lot of improvement meeting the needs of especially kids with ADHD. Um, if anything, it feels like it's been getting worse lately. Like class sizes seem like they're getting bigger, and without a lot of teachers are just done. They're fed up. They're leaving the profession. So then you've got people with even less experience or maybe don't even have a credential or whatever. They're just trying their best. Um, and it's not fair to them, but it's also not fair to the students that they're not being provided better. So
Yeah.
there is definitely a lot of room for improvement, especially for kids with ADHD in education.
Yeah. And it
Uh,
has to be a partnership. Parents have to be engaged, school has to be engaged, administration and the teacher. But I do see a lot of places also where, I want to reach out to parents and say, school is not a treatment center for ADHD either,
yeah,
like we've got to figure out what school can do, what are some reasonable expectations, and what's sort of beyond the scope of a mainstream classroom. I
yeah,
Yeah, I
no,
feel for
absolutely.
parents who think that school is going to treat or cure ADHD.
Right. Or dyslexia or autism or any of the others.
Right.
Yeah, there is, I do, I, I understand some of the hostility that I've seen parents have towards the schools. I understand that sometimes the schools are not doing what they should be doing, but sometimes then their hostility feeds into the hostility of other parents towards school when that school didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Um, and the more we can have a partnership with the schools, the more everyone benefits.
Yeah.
So I do think that is a really important point. Okay, any last words of wisdom that you want to share with our listeners today?
I think that's a great place to wrap up. The importance of partnership. And, from a parent perspective, having that team for your child with ADHD or autism or AUDHD, however we're going to start saying that, you know, the partnership and the team is so important. You know, be professional in your interactions with school. Be appreciative. Ask what can get done. Ask, what can't get done and why. understand the laws, be in partnership with your physician, whoever is your pediatrician, if you have a child psychiatrist, a therapist, partnership is what is needed from a treatment perspective for our neurodiverse kids. And so I think maybe that's a good place to wrap up is when you put the time into building a team for your child, it definitely pays off.
Yes. Yes. Well said. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I will definitely have links below for the Russell coaching. Is there any other places that you want people to reach out to you or track you down?
Nope, go to our website,
Okay.
russellcoaching.com, or just type my name, Norrine Russell, into AI and it will take you there. And for your listeners, we do have a coupon code of Russell 26 that they can use to get 20% off 3 months of coaching. So Russell 26, 20% off 3 months of coaching, whether that's summer or school year. We'd be happy to work with you. And I do offer complimentary calls to parents to discuss whatever's on their mind. And I set aside actually 30 whole minutes to do those. And so it's not just a 10-minute conversation. So yeah, Russell Coaching,
Beautiful.
whether in your Google search bar or your AI. Come learn about what we're doing, explore some of the resources we have, and if you like, set up a call with me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your generosity towards everyone. I know there's quite a few people who should take advantage of it. Hopefully they do.
Sometimes what kids need is one-on-one
Yeah.
direct instruction or coaching. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me on. I so much appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.